Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into the scorched boots of a merchant, a dreamer, a possibly doomed traveler trying to make it across the legendary Silk Road. Picture this: wind-whipped dunes stretching endlessly in all directions, sun blazing down like a judgment, and not a single cloud or bathroom in sight. You've just stumbled into Dunhuang, one of the last civilized outposts before the Silk Road turns into a dry, grinding path toward madness. The sand here doesn't just crunch under your boots, it gets in your nose, your ears, your eyeballs. You've barely begun, and you're already a walking dust storm. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know where you're listening from and what time it is there. Dunhuang would probably envy your indoor plumbing. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge through the city gates, greeted not with cheers or warm welcome, but the smell of camel dung and boiled grain. Dunhuang might be the edge of the known world, but it's a hub for monks, merchants, soldiers, spies, and the occasional overly optimistic tourist like you. You expected exotic energy. What you get is sweaty linen, a dozen dialects you can't understand, and a pricing system that changes based on how gullible you look. At least the cave murals offer some escape, those Buddhist masterpieces carved into the cliffs by the Mongol caves. You glance up, wide-eyed. It's strange to think that pilgrims and monks once painted these while fasting through sandstorms, and yet here they are, vibrant and alive, while your water skin is very much not. Historians still argue whether some of these paintings were touched up during the Tang dynasty or left in their original, 1,000-year-old state. Either way, the images seem to mock your blistered feet and clueless expression. There's a local saying that Dunhuang separates the hopeful from the foolish. You're pretty sure you're in the latter camp. This city isn't just a starting point, it's a trial. You try to bargain for a guide, and the man you hire has 3 teeth, 1 eye, and 0 patience. He gestures toward your supplies and scoffs. Your last 2 days. Encouraging. Quirky fact: traders here sometimes smeared yak butter on their eyebrows to keep the desert wind from freezing their faces solid. You consider it, before realizing you're out of yak and pride. By nightfall, you've been overcharged for camel feed, tricked into swapping a bronze coin for a fake jade charm, and accidentally insulted someone's grandmother by offering your left hand in greeting. Turns out, body language across cultures is more complex than you thought. The tea is bitter, the food is bland, and you now have a pet lizard you didn't ask for, that just won't leave your saddlebag. You sleep that night in a rented tent that leaks sand through every stitch. Outside, the wind howls like some ancient god mocking your life choices. You dreamed of adventure romantic caravans across timeless lands. What you got is itchy bedding and the creeping suspicion that this might be the dumbest thing you've ever attempted. By morning, the caravan is forming. Lines of traders, camels, and guards stretch along the horizon like ants crawling toward a fire. You strap on your satchel, adjust your boots, which are already starting to smell like regret, and take one last look at the flickering torches of Dunhuang. You're not ready, but the Silk Road doesn't care. You don't even make it 10 miles out of Dunhuang before realizing your biggest mistake, assuming this road was safe just because people used it for centuries. The Silk Road, as it turns out, is less a road and more a loose suggestion, a braided mess of desert tracks, goat trails, and dry riverbeds pretending to be paths. And most of those are patrolled by people who are a lot better at surviving this terrain than you. You're not even sure if the guy leading your caravan is named Bahadur, or if that's just what he yells every time a bandit shows up. Because yes, bandits. By late afternoon, the caravan slows to a halt, and you hear hushed murmurs, fingers pointing toward a rocky ridge in the distance. Tiny silhouettes flit across the horizon, like vultures that forgot how to fly. Nobody says the word aloud, but it's thick in the air. Bandits, armed ones, maybe Mongol holdouts, maybe just desperate locals. Doesn't matter. Everyone checks their belts, readjusts blades, and reaches for the good knives. You reach for your only weapon, your look of mild panic. Historians still argue whether the number of bandit attacks was exaggerated by travelers to boost their own legends, but you're starting to believe every wild tale, especially when Bahadur calmly mutters something that definitely sounds like, "Hide your valuables in your shoes." The caravan master decides to bribe them. Gold is out of the question, so you're tasked with walking forward, holding up 2 bolts of mid-quality silk as a peace offering. You feel ridiculous. Like a child trying to pay off a dragon with macaroni art. One of the bandits walks up, looks you dead in the eye, takes the silk hand, pats you on the cheek, then vanishes back into the rocks. Was that mercy? Or sarcasm? You're not sure. The tension lingers. No one talks. You ride in silence for hours, the only sound being the crunch of hooves over gravel, and your camel occasionally letting out noises that sound suspiciously judgmental. Speaking of camels, let's talk about how much they hate you. You had romantic notions of forming a bond, with yours naming it something like Stormhoof or Sir Cuddles. Instead, it spits on your boots, ignores your commands, and once, very deliberately, stepped sideways to push you into a thorn bush. Camels are the grumpy old men of the animal kingdom, and yours seems personally offended by your existence. Still, it knows the terrain better than you, and unlike you, it doesn't need directions, maps, or sunscreen. Your guide tries to teach you a few tricks, like never pitch your tent with its back to the wind, or how to bury your water bag beneath a pile of sand to keep it cool. He shows you how to check for thieves by leaving a bowl of grain beside your supplies. If any's missing by dawn, someone's helping themselves. Apparently, this is normal. You pretend to understand. You don't. Quirky fact of the day? Some bandits along the Silk Road would leave decoy trails, well-worn fake paths leading into traps or dead ends. You're shown one just before sundown, a path that dips into a shallow ravine littered with broken cartwheels, and one perfectly preserved boot. Just the one. You shiver and keep walking. When you finally stop for the night, the caravan arranges itself into a defensive crescent, wagons pulled close together, fires burning low. Bahadur places small bells on the perimeter ropes, strung with thin cords of yak hair. If anything moves out there, the bells ring. If they don't, well, let's not think about that. Sleep doesn't come easy. The desert wind is sharp, dry, and relentless. It drags dust into your nostrils and hums low, like a whisper you can't quite catch. You wrap your headscarf tighter, squeeze your eyes shut, and pray no one decides your travel bag looks worth stealing. Because tomorrow, you'll be back on that trail, moving slower, sweatier, and slightly more paranoid than the day before. Welcome to the safe part of the journey. You wake up stiff, dry-mouthed, and instantly itchy. There's sand in your ears, sand in your boots, sand somehow inside your socks despite every effort to keep it out. Your camel is standing over you, with what feels like deliberate contempt, chewing slowly and loudly on something that used to be part of your saddlebag. You groan, stretch, and try to pretend you're not regretting every life choice that led to this moment. But regrets don't matter now. You've got another 30 miles of sun-scorched trail ahead, and a camel that clearly wants you dead. You thought camels would be graceful, mysterious, majestic desert ships gliding across golden dunes. What you got is a sullen beast with matted fur, yellowed teeth, and the attitude of a chain-smoking bartender forced to work a kid's party. You try to climb onto its back, and it shifts just enough to make you stumble, grinning with its weird, sideways teeth. Historians still argue whether early travelers actually rode camels the entire way, or just used them as pack animals while walking beside them. After the third time you nearly fall face first trying to mount yours, you seriously consider just walking. Your thighs already ache from yesterday's ride. Camel saddles are designed for utility, not comfort, and there's not a whisper of padding. The wooden frame digs into your legs, and each lurch forward sends a shockwave through your spine. You try to mimic the other, traders relaxed, swaying slightly with the motion, but instead end up wobbling like a drunk marionette. One man finally takes pity on you and hands you a chunk of dried apricot. Chew slow, he says. It keeps the nausea down. The sun rises fast and hard. The air goes from crisp to furnace hot in a blink. You wrap your scarf around your face, but your skin still burns. Even your eyeballs feel dry. And the worst part? You're still in the easy part of the desert, just west of the Gobi. The really fun stretch hasn't even begun yet. The trail narrows into a steep ravine known among travelers as the Jaw, probably because it looks like you're walking into the mouth of something that eats fools for breakfast. The rock walls rise sharply on both sides, and the wind funnels through in low moans. You pass a half-buried skeleton, just bones and tattered cloth. No one speaks. Some drop small coins or beads beside it in an old ritual, meant to honor the dead or maybe bribe the spirits. You do the same, because you're not taking any chances. Your camel steps over the bones without pause. By midday, the heat is unbearable. You're chugging water faster than you should, even though you know that rationing is the rule. There's a constant battle between thirst and panic. Drink now and suffer later, or wait and feel your tongue turn to leather. You think you see a shimmering pool ahead, nestled between some rocks. You quicken your pace and get laughed at by a child riding with one of the merchant families. It's a mirage, of course, the kind you've read about but never truly believed in until now. You squint again. Nope, just hot air and your own desperation painted on the sand. Quirky tip from your guide. When you're desperate for shade and there are no rocks around, dig a shallow hole and lie in it. The sand a few inches below the surface is cooler. You try it during the brief lunch stop, but your camel decides this is the perfect time to investigate your face up close and sneezes directly into your ear. You regret everything. Back on the trail, you start noticing patterns in the misery. The dust always seems to kick up just as you try to eat. The flies target your eyes with military precision. Your camel flatulates every time you're trying to impress someone by pretending to be a serious traveler. By now, you've stopped caring. Dignity was left somewhere near Dunhuang. In the late afternoon, you reach a cluster of withered shrubs and a trickle of muddy water. It's technically an oasis barely. A few battered tents are pitched there, and an old woman with sunburned cheeks is selling fermented mare's milk. You buy a bowl, because hydration is hydration, but the taste is not ideal. It hits like sour yogurt that someone dared to microwave, then leave in the sun. Still, it's calories. You choke it down and try not to think about it. The woman tells a story, one passed from merchant to merchant, of a caravan swallowed whole by a sudden sandstorm, lost to the dunes forever. Supposedly, sometimes you can hear their bells at night, long after the wind dies down. Your guide chuckles and calls it bedtime nonsense, but he checks the sky a little more often after that. You set up camp just off the trail, behind a curve of rocks that offers minimal protection. The camels are tied down, the fires are lit low. You eat a handful of hard bread and dried meat. It tastes like chewing a doormat but fills the void. You lie down on your mat and look up at the stars, which blaze across the sky in unbroken brilliance. There's no light pollution out here, just the silent expanse, the occasional grunt from a camel, and the creaking of ropes in the wind. And that's when you hear it bells, soft, distant, like a caravan far off. Too far. Your guide is already standing, eyes scanning the darkness. Everyone hushes. You hold your breath. But it's nothing. Just wind through the rocks. Or maybe not. Historians still debate whether some of the desert ghost caravans were hallucinations caused by heat stroke or rooted in actual events. Either way, you wrap your blanket tighter and pretend you're not listening. You sleep again, if you can call it sleep. It's more like drifting in and out of dreams, interrupted by every gust of wind and shifting hoof. In the desert, nothing is still for long, not even you. You wake up to cold, not a gentle chill, not a cool morning breeze. This is sharp, bone-digging cold that feels entirely out of place in a place you were cursing for heat just yesterday. The desert has two moods: incinerate your flesh by day, and welcome to your frostbite tutorial by night. You peel back the blanket, stiff with dust and camel dander, and sit up slowly. Every muscle protests. Your knees crack. Your back is furious. And your camel? Still chewing, still judging. Today you're entering the Gansu corridor, the narrow funnel of land that stretches between the Chilean mountains and the Gobi Desert, and every foot of it feels like a test. On maps, it looks like a logical passage, a clear lane, but walking it, it's a corridor in name only, more like a never-ending obstacle course, made by a vengeful geographer with a grudge against humanity. Jagged rocks scrape your boots, dry riverbeds trip your footing, and every so often, a bitter gust of wind tears across the path, throwing up dust like it's trying to blind you on purpose. The good news: the terrain is rising slightly, giving you better views. The bad news: you're going up into thinner air, and your lungs are not impressed. You start coughing halfway through the morning climb, and by midday, your breath comes in shallow gasps. Your lips are cracked, your head swims, and your camel, naturally, is unfazed. Your guide tells you this stretch was once part of the Hexi corridor, the lifeline of Han Dynasty trade. Military forts used to dot the landscape, keeping bandits at bay. Some say the bones of fallen soldiers are still buried beneath the trail, their helmets rusted into the soil. Historians still argue whether the corridor was a true stronghold or more of a fragile thread constantly under siege. You lean toward the latter because right now it doesn't feel secure. It feels like any wrong step will send you sliding into a ravine. You pass a ruined tower by late afternoon. The bricks are scorched, crumbling, and barely standing. A marker nearby is etched in 3 scripts: Chinese, Sogdian, and something you can't place. It's a reminder that this route wasn't just about silk and spices. Ideas, languages, and whole philosophies moved along this path. Buddhism, for example, traveled from India to China, right through this corridor. You think about that while chewing your 4th piece of jerky for the day, each bite drier than the last. You're definitely not bringing enlightenment, just body odor and blistered optimism. You scramble down into a narrow pass as the wind picks up. The rocks here seem sharper, more aggressive somehow, like they were shaped by a blade. Your camel stumbles once, and you panic, imagining the whole caravan tumbling into a canyon. But it rights itself, snorts at you again, and continues like nothing happened. The same can't be said for your nerves. Around you, the silence deepens. Not peaceful silence, but the eerie kind, the one that makes your ears ring and your imagination wander. The only sound is your own breath and the occasional creak of leather straps. Your guide gestures to a nearby overhang. We rest there. Rocks protect from wind. Maybe wolves. Maybe wolves. Excellent. You reach the overhang and collapse, grateful for shade, and even more grateful to not be moving. As the others set up camp, you try to shake the cold from your fingers. Even here, in what should be the desert's heart, you can't trust the weather. It changes faster than your confidence. Quirky fact: some ancient traders in the corridor carried live tortoises in clay pots. Why? Because tortoises were considered good luck and, in a pinch, emergency rations. You glance at your supplies and shudder. Hopefully, you never get that hungry. Dinner tonight is better than usual. Someone's traded for millet porridge, and while it's still mostly flavorless, at least it's warm. You eat slowly, savoring the steam. Your fingers finally stop trembling. For a moment, the caravan feels like a community. Laughter here and there, the clink of bowls, someone tuning a stringed instrument badly but enthusiastically. The sound echoes off the rocks, oddly comforting. But of course, the calm doesn't last. Just before nightfall, one of the guards notices fresh prints near the perimeter. Not camel, not human, probably wolves, maybe even snow leopards, depending on how far you've climbed. You clutch your blanket tighter and listen as a plan is made. One guard will keep watch while the others sleep in shifts. You offer to help, and they politely decline, probably because your sword grip looks more like a knitting needle stance. Sleep is patchy. Your dreams blur with memories. You dream of collapsing towers, snarling teeth in the dark, and a camel that finally speaks, only to tell you how bad you smell. When you wake, it's still night. The stars are blinding, the kind you only see when you're so far from civilization that the universe shows off. You lie still, listening. Just wind, just fire crackle. No bells this time. Morning comes harsh and early. There's ice on your blanket. Ice. In the desert. You scrape it off with numb fingers, grumbling as your joints protest once again. The trail awaits. And today? Today you're supposed to cross a cliffside pass known affectionately as the Steps of the Stupid. It earns the name quickly. The path narrows into a ledge, barely wide enough for a single foot. The cliff wall rises on one side, sheer and unforgiving. The other side? A drop into oblivion. There are no railings, no ropes. Just stubborn tradition and camel stubbornness keeping everyone upright. You try not to look down, but your balance wavers with every step. At one point, a gust of wind slams into your side, and you drop to your knees on instinct. Your guide laughs and offers a hand. Good reaction, he says. Next time, maybe don't scream. You press on. You grip the reins. You pray to any deity listening. And somehow, you make it to the other side. The pass widens again, and the caravan regroups. Faces are pale, lips are tight, but there's quiet pride, too. That was a deadly stretch, and you made it. Barely. You set up camp under a rock arch, your legs still shaking, your throat raw from dry air. You look around at the others. all battered but still standing. This road isn't just testing your body, it's grinding down your soul, polishing you with grit, wind, and fear until all that's left is whatever can actually survive. You're not sure you're that person yet, but you're still walking. There's no real moment when the desert gives up and becomes an oasis, it's more like a trickle of suggestion. You squint across the horizon and think, maybe that shimmer isn't just heat haze this time. Maybe there's water, trees even. But the road makes a mockery of hope more often than not. And so, you learn to second-guess everything your senses whisper. The wind sighs through your scarf. Sand crunches underfoot. And your guide, with a shrug that could mean get ready, or you'll regret this, points toward a mirage that slowly begins to take shape as something disturbingly real. This is the part of the Silk Road where truth gets flexible. You've entered the no, man's land of oasis, illusions where what looks like salvation might be a hallucination or worse, someone else's trap. What lies ahead is a water source. Yes, but barely one. A cracked bowl of a valley, its edges jagged with broken rocks and ancient fire pits. There's a spring bubbling at its heart, thin and low, protected by woven reed fences and a half-collapsed mud brick watchpost that leans like it's had enough of everything. When your caravan limps toward it, you're greeted not with celebration but suspicion. A group of local traders already occupies the spring. They wear loose, dusty robes dyed in faded reds and yellows, and they watch your party like wolves might watch another pack. The guide raises his hands in greeting, and for a full minute, no one moves. Then one of the traders, a broad man with a beard that could hide birds, nods slowly. The water will be shared, but not for free. You're tasked with helping barter. You offer trinkets, cloth, some dried apricots, and a spool of green-dyed thread. It's not enough. So, you're volunteered to perform. Yes, perform. Your guide slaps your shoulder and mutters, "Foreign novelty. Make them laugh." So, you try a little song, then a clumsy dance. You even juggle a few stones, nearly dropping one on your foot. The traders chuckle. It's not clear whether they're laughing with you or at you, but the mood shifts. A bowl of water is handed over. Crisis averted barely. That spring, for all its stingy trickle, becomes a stage. Historians still argue whether oasis control was enforced with formal alliances or shifting temporary truces, but on days like this, it's clear that etiquette is just as important as swords. One wrong word, and you might find yourself exiled to the sand. You drink too fast, of course. The cold water hits your stomach like a rock. Your head spins, and your guide smacks the back of your neck. Slow. Fool. You nod, coughing, eyes watering, but you're grinning too. It's water. Real water. A quirky tip you learn during rest. Never trust the greenest-looking pool. Algae blooms mean still water, and still water in this region often hides parasites. The safest sources are the ones that look least appealing, like the spring you just drank from, which resembled a goat's bath but apparently passes the not poison test. You sit near a fire and chew on a chunk of dried cheese, trading stories with a boy no older than 12 who speaks 5 languages and can write in 3 of them. He's the son of one of the merchants and casually mentions that he's already crossed the Silk Road twice. You try not to feel useless in comparison. He shows you a charm made of copper and string, explaining that it wards off mirages. "Does it work?" you ask. He shrugs. "I'm still here." That night, tensions flare. One of your caravan's donkeys has vanished, and a heated argument breaks out between 2 guards and a local shepherd. The language barrier doesn't help. Weapons are drawn. Your guide steps in, raising his hands, translating fast and hard. Eventually, the situation deflates like a punctured water skin. The donkey was found nearby, chewing on someone's sandals. Everyone laughs. Nervously, you sleep on stone that night, curled around your pack. You dream of pools of water that turn to sand in your hands, of thirsty ghosts offering tea, of snakes coiled around springs whispering, "Drink if you dare." Morning comes with a sour taste in your mouth and aching limbs. The caravan loads up quietly, everyone eyeing the oasis traders with forced smiles. You leave a few coins behind, a peace offering maybe, just enough to say, "Thank you," without saying, "We might return." Now, you're headed for a rougher patchless water, fewer landmarks, and terrain that doesn't even pretend to be kind. The sand is coarser here, mixed with tiny flakes of salt that sting your skin. The wind picks up and starts flinging granules into your face like it has a personal vendetta. You wrap your headscarf tighter, duck your chin, and march on. Your camel trips once and nearly crushes your foot. You respond with a stream of muttered insults. It sneezes again, likely on purpose. You stop midday to rest in the shade of a rock that looks suspiciously like a dragon's jawbone. There's a small mark etched into its safisa, symbol used by traders to show they passed safely. A crescent moon above a single dot. Some say these markings are a form of prayer. Others think they're just graffiti. Historians still debate their origin. Were they left by Sogdian traders? Tang dynasty soldiers? Nomadic poets with too much time? You trace the crescent with your fingers, then leave your own mark beside it. A crude little drawing of a camel and a stick figure waving sadly. As you trudge on, you pass what might be ruins. Stone blocks half buried in sand, too square to be natural. Maybe an old inn, a watchtower, maybe someone's home. A few bones lie near the edge, bleached white and worn smooth. No one stops. You all pretend you didn't see them. By dusk, you're scraping the bottom of your food sack. A shared stew is made from dry peas, old carrots, and mystery meat. It's spicy, thankfully enough to hide the fact that it might have once had feathers. You gulp it down, stomach gurgling in mild protest. A local woman offers you a pinch of herbs to rub under your nose. It keeps the smell of camel from sticking, she says. It doesn't work. Nothing works. As night falls, the stars emerge again, this time obscured by a thin veil of dust that makes them shimmer and flicker. You sit on a cracked rock, watching them pulse, and wonder what lies ahead. How many days are left? How many oasis lies and vanishing springs? You don't know. The Silk Road keeps its secrets until it's ready to reveal them. You just hope it gives you enough water to reach the next one. The first thing you notice when you wake is the sound silence. Not peaceful silence, not the gentle hush of a sleeping world, but the sort of silence that's waiting to break. You blink up at a pale sky, still tinged with the blue-grey breath of dawn, and realize the caravan is already stirring. Except it's not the usual routine. There's tension. The camels are restless. Your guide is pacing, and you soon find out why. Your caravan was robbed in the night. Not everything, just enough to make life difficult. 2 bundles of silk gone, a sack of silver coins, a precious string of coral beads meant for trade, stolen from under someone's sleeping head, and most alarmingly, a map, a good one, hand-drawn, annotated in 4 languages, and now nowhere to be found. There's no sign of a fight, no footprints clear enough to follow. Whoever did this knew the terrain, knew your schedule, and probably watched you for days. Bandits? Maybe. Rivals? Possibly. Inside job? Nobody says it aloud, but everyone's thinking it. You're handed a job. Go through your things. Account for every item. You rummage through your pack, your meager belongings untouched. That means one of 2 things. Either you were lucky, or your possessions weren't worth stealing. Probably the second. You feel a weird blend of relief and insult. Breakfast is rushed. No one speaks much. Paranoia clings to the group like desert dust fine, dry and impossible to shake. One of the guards accuses another of falling asleep on watch. Voices rise. Hands drift to weapons. Your guide steps in again, his voice sharp, commanding. Enough. We keep moving. No delay. Whoever took it gone by now. So you march. The sun rises higher, hot and indifferent. And the more you walk, the more you realize how vulnerable you are out here. There's no real law, just overlapping layers of reputation, custom, and threat. You pass a trail, marker 3 vertical stones balanced on one another, with faded cloth strips tied around the top. A silent message. Someone died here. Maybe 2. Someone's. You don't ask. As the day wears on, the road becomes less a route and more a philosophy. There's no path now, just a general direction. The sand is endless. The dunes crest like ocean waves. Occasionally, you see bones. Small, bleached, scattered. Goat? Dog? Human? No one says. No one stops to check. In the afternoon, the air grows still. Too still. No wind. No sound. Just the crunch of your steps and the uneven rhythm of camel hooves. Then, a shape on the horizon. Another caravan? It moves slowly, but with purpose. You squint. No, not a caravan. A single rider. Black scarf wrapped tight, mounted on a lean horse instead of a camel. A rarity. A statement. This person has speed. Power. They approach but veer off at the last moment, trailing a wide arc before vanishing into the dunes. You feel the tension ease only slightly. Your guide mutters, "Scout." You ask, "For who?" He just shakes his head. You stop in a dry riverbed for the evening. No water, just brittle shrubs and cracked clay. The caravan forms a circle, as always. You help collect firewood-twisted branches and thorny roots and return with a few splinters in your hands. Dinner is flatbread and lentils tonight, and it's surprisingly decent, though the lentils taste faintly of camel. You don't ask how. Someone tells a story, an old Sogdian tale about a merchant who tried to cheat a demon out of a trade deal. He promised his soul in exchange for safe passage, then tried to outwit the demon with riddles. In the end, the demon didn't even take his soul, it took his voice. The merchant kept walking, but could never bargain again. You laugh, quietly. It feels too close to truth out here. Quirky detail. Some traders sewed coins into the hems of their clothing, both as a precaution against theft and to avoid taxes at checkpoints. You find yourself checking your sleeves that night, just in case. Not that you have coins to hide, but the ritual is oddly comforting. That night, the stars are sharp again. Your blanket is full of burrs. Your camel farts dramatically and sighs. You try to sleep, but the silence presses in again denser this time, full of unspoken questions and unfinished maps. Somewhere out there, the thief is moving east to wester, maybe watching still. You clutch your bag close, knowing full well how little protection that offers. Morning brings a change. You reach a fork, two possible routes, neither marked clearly. One dips into a basin surrounded by crumbling cliffs, said to lead to a small town with water and supplies. The other is shorter, riskier, rumoured to cut days off the journey but with no shade, no settlements, and no confirmed wells. The group splits. Some go with the safe route. Others, like your guide, choose speed. You're given a choice. You go with him. Hours later, you begin to question everything. The shortcut is hell, flat, featureless, shimmering with false promises. The heat is worse than before. Even the camels start to protest, moaning and stomping with every few steps. One drops to its knees and refuses to move. Its owner has to coax it up with a bribe of dates. There's a moment in the late afternoon when you're convinced you've lost time. The sun shifts in strange ways. Your thoughts grow sluggish. Your lips crack open, and when you try to speak, your voice comes out hoarse and unfamiliar. This is the desert's deeper danger, not knives or thieves, but exhaustion. The kind that creeps in quiet, makes you forget things, like how far you've come, how much water you drank, how many steps you've taken. Historians still argue whether these shorter, uncharted paths were ancient smugglers' trails or just desperation-born choices made in the worst circumstances. Either way, you're in it now. By evening, your feet bleed through your sandals. Your mouth tastes like copper. You collapse beneath a broken pillar, an old milestone, maybe part of a way station long since swallowed by sand. You scrawl something into it with a dull blade. Still here. Maybe someone will see it. Maybe not. That night, you don't dream. You just close your eyes and float. The sun rises slowly, as if even it's too tired to continue, painting the horizon in layers of pink and orange before settling into its usual role as merciless overseer. You blink sand from your lashes, stretch limbs that feel barely attached, and rise to the sound of distant coughing and groaning camels. Your group is thinner. Now 2 traders decided to double back toward the safer route. One fell ill yesterday and is being carried in a sling between 2 animals, and one, an older man with cracked glasses and shaking hands, simply disappeared in the night. No one discusses it. Not here. Not when everyone's just trying to keep walking forward. You haven't bathed in days. Your skin is caked in sweat and dust. Your fingernails are black at the edges, and your clothes, since soft and hopeful, have stiffened into itchy armor. But worse than all of that is your stomach, which has begun to openly rebel. It started last night with a gurgle, then bloomed into full mutiny this morning. Your guide hands you a handful of dried ginger and mimes chewing. You obey. It doesn't help much, but it distracts you for a while from the tight, writhing pain building in your belly. You've reached the part of the Silk Road where food becomes both salvation and gamble. It's not about flavor anymore, it's about survival and risk management. When you stop at a crude roadside shack, barely worthy of the word shelter, the proprietor, an old woman, with hands like tree roots offers a bowl of stew. It smells strange. Not bad exactly, but mysterious. The liquid's thick and dark, with floating globs of something you pretend not to recognize. You hesitate. She sees your face, laughs a little, and assures you in broken Persian that it's good for walking, which is exactly the kind of vague, fortune cookie endorsement that could mean nutritious or hallucinogenic. You eat it anyway. At first, it's just hot and bitter. Then, your mouth goes numb. Then, your vision gets slightly sharper, and everything smells faintly of mint. A woman nearby slaps a fly off her shoulder and mutters something about donkey broth. You try not to think about it. Food here doesn't come with labels, just lineage, and if you ask too many questions, you might lose your appetite permanently, which would be a real problem, because calories are gold out here. Quirky fact: some traders swore by camel butter as a panacea. Rub it on wounds, put it in tea, smear it on your temples to ward off headaches. You're offered a dab to soothe your stomach. You politely decline. You've seen where that camel has been. Historians still argue about how standardized food and cooking techniques were along the Silk Road. Some say culinary customs diffused freely across cultures. Others insist each camp jealously guarded their food like state secrets. After this morning's stew experience, you're leaning toward chaos, and probably disease. The day's walk is brutal, stomach cramps aside. Your steps become automatic. One foot, then the other. You focus on little things. The way the sun carves hard shadows across the dunes, the rhythmic swish of the camel's tail beside you, the scent of cardamom wafting from someone's open pouch. You pass a group of nomads heading west tall, wrapped in layer after layer of coarse fabric, their faces barely visible. One stops and offers you a lump of what looks like pressed grain. You accept it with both hands, as you were taught. It's sweet and earthy and sticks to your teeth, but it settles your insides a little. You offer a string of beads in return. The man nods and disappears back into the dunes. Your guide tells you this was a lucky encounter. Not everyone along this stretch is generous. Some are deliberately hostile, especially toward outsiders. You ask why. He shrugs. Too many liars come this way, and thieves, and people with no business walking desert. You wonder which of those you are. Late afternoon brings signs of civilization. Again a cluster of tents beside a cluster of stunted trees. Smoke rises from a central fire, and the air smells like grilled meat and boiling tea. Your stomach lurches with interest. You're invited to sit. Not everyone is. You suspect your presence is tolerated only because you look half dead and unarmed. The meal is simple but glorious. Flatbread with sesame, a stew that actually includes visible vegetables, and a tiny cup of tea so strong it feels like a punch to the chest. You nearly cry. You offer coins you've been saving for emergencies. They wave them away. You give them anyway. Gratitude feels too big to carry otherwise. The elder of the camp asks where you're headed. You say the eastern cities. He chuckles and says, "Many say that. Few arrive." There's a long pause. Then he tells a story of a man who followed the road for fortune, carrying spices wrapped in silk, riding with a caravan of 50. One day, he ate something from a spoiled jar. By nightfall, he was hallucinating. By dawn, he was gone, walked out into the dunes, never to return. They found his boots 2 weeks later, full of sand and scorpions. You smile weakly and clutch your belly. That night, you lie under the stars again. There's a cool breeze. You're given a blanket that smells faintly of goat, but it's warm. You sleep deeper than you have in days, dreamless and still. But dawn, as always, breaks with new discomfort. Your stomach's slightly better. Not well, but manageable. The pain has settled into a dull ache, like a complaint that knows it won't be heard. You load up your supplies lighter now. A few more items traded or consumed and prepare to move on. Someone hands you a gourd filled with fermented mare's milk. For strength, they say. You sip. It's fizzy and foul. You force yourself to drink it anyway. You march again. Mid-morning, you pass a marker post carved into the rock, a face with bulging eyes and an open mouth. Some say it's a protective spirit. Others think it's a warning. You decide it's both. You cross a field of salt pans glimmering sheets of white that blind the eyes and crisp the soles of your feet. The heat here reflects up from the ground, making you feel like you're walking through the inside of a frying pan. The wind has stopped. The air is dead. Your guide wraps a damp cloth around your neck. You nod in thanks. He says nothing. just walks. By the time the sun begins to fall, your lips are cracked open again, your skin darkened by both sun and dirt, but somehow your stomach's holding on, maybe out of spite. And you realize, with no small surprise, that today, despite everything, you survived it. The land begins to shift again, subtly at first, fewer dunes, more tufts of grass, hints of green that whisper promises the desert has no intention of keeping. But you notice, after days of nothing but beige and bone, your eyes latch onto color like it's treasure. The ground isn't softer, exactly, but the terrain grows more unpredictable. Flat sand becomes dry scrubland, scrubland becomes stone, and stone becomes endless steppe. And that's when it hits you. You're in nomad country now. Gone are the desolate valleys and the silence of buried oases. Here, the sky opens wider, the horizon stretches endlessly, and everything feels watched. Your guide grows quieter, scanning the hills more often, his hand never far from his blade. You don't ask questions. You just follow, trusting that his nervous energy means you should be twice as alert. By late morning, the air carries a new smell. Wood smoke, sweat, leather, and animals. Lots of animals. You crest a small rise and see thermiots scattered like dice on a table, horses tethered in loose circles, and a few people moving about with the kind of confidence that says they own everything their eyes can see. Nomads, clans that have roamed these lands for generations, unfazed by geography, weather, or maps. They live in motion. They live in resistance. And, as you'll soon discover, they don't care much for guests. Your guide approaches slowly, his scarf wrapped high and tight, shoulders low. He doesn't speak. He just waits until a pair of riders appears, both young, both armed, both smiling in that way. People smile when they're deciding whether to like you or rob you. The tension is instant. Your caravan halts, eyes narrow, hands drop to hilts. But after a long pause, the riders gesture toward the yurts, and you're allowed to continue. No words exchanged, just a silent decision. You're tolerated for now. You set up camp a good distance from theirs, close enough to show you're peaceful, far enough to avoid being seen as nosy. A few children wander over to stare at you. One throws a clod of dirt at your camel. It spits in return. A diplomatic exchange. Later, a nomad elder visits. He's wrapped in layers of dyed wool, his beard braided with bits of bronze, and his voice raspy from years of yelling into wind. He doesn't smile, but he offers dried meat and a bowl of fermented goat milk. You accept both with both hands, as you've learned. He sits with your guide. They speak for hours, no shouting, no smiles. Just quiet, clipped words. You understand none of it. When the elder finally leaves, your guide sighs deeply and announces, "We stay 2 days. No more." Oh, you're not sure if that's a privilege or a warning. During your stay, you watch how nomads live. It's a system so efficient and foreign, it makes your own caravan seem clumsy. The yurts go up and down in hours. The herds are rotated daily. Children ride horses before they can write. Every person knows their role. No one wastes anything. A family's entire wealth can fit in a cart, and yet they seem richer than the silk traders you've seen dripping with brocade. There's a different kind of power here earned by survival, passed down through stories and scars. Quirky fact: some nomads believed the wind carried the voices of ancestors. They'd whistle into the breeze as a way of praying or asking for guidance. You try it once, quietly, while no one's looking. The wind doesn't answer, but it does shift cooler, kinder. You take that as a yes. Historians still debate whether the nomadic clans were mostly hostile to Silk Road travelers or essential protectors who offered guidance through their territories. From where you're standing, the answer seems to be both. It depends on the day, and the moon, and how respectful your camel has been. On the second night, a celebration begins. A boy has completed his first solo ride across the plains, a rite of passage. There's music-stringed instruments that sound like wind and birdsong and dances you don't understand but feel pulled into anyway. You're invited to join. You try. You fail. You get laughed at, but in a kind way. Someone pours you a drink that tastes like smoke and fire. You take a second sip. That night, lying beside a crackling fire, you feel something strange, safe. Not entirely, not naively, but enough to let your body relax for the first time in weeks. You stretch your legs, look up at the stars, and wonder how many other traders have rested right here, hundreds of years before you. Maybe none. Maybe dozens. Maybe someone once fell in love here, or swore vengeance, or simply told a good joke that got lost in the wind. Morning arrives with a cold splash. Literally. One of the children dumps water on your head as a farewell gift. Your guide laughs. You don't. It's time to leave. The nomads watch you go without waving. Just silent stares from horseback as your caravan winds its way back into the open land. You feel the absence of their camp immediately. The road is lonelier. The wind, louder. The sky, more vast. And now, there's no more oasis for a while. Just endless plains that stretch to the horizon, dotted with small shrubs and the occasional bleached stone cairn, marking graves, others marking boundaries, and a few just there to confuse newcomers. You push forward, legs aching, eyes scanning constantly. You're not sure what you're looking for anymore. Signs of life? Signs of danger? Signs of a bathroom that isn't a bush? Who knows? Midday brings a surprise. A rider appears from the south, dusty, breathless, riding hard. He pulls up near your group, speaks urgently with your guide, and then vanishes again. You ask what it was about. Raiders, your guide says, frowning. Far off, but moving. He doesn't explain further. That night, the fires are kept smaller. The camp is set in a hollow, surrounded by rocks. No music, no tea, just quiet tension and sharpened blades. The Silk Road is long. You knew that. But no one told you it would feel endless. Not because of the miles, but because of how it stretches your idea of what a day is. You've lost track of how many you've travelled. You mark time now by fires built, water shared, and how many different ways you've been told, you probably shouldn't be here. Ah, but you are. And tomorrow, you'll walk farther. By now, you've stopped asking how many days it's been. You measure time in camel blisters and how long your shadow stretches before noon. The map, such as it was, has become more of a suggestion than a plan, half of it torn, part of it stained with what may be fermented mare's milk, and all of it based on guesses, oral tradition, and drawings made by people who likely never left their own hometowns. And yet, somehow, you're still here. You've made it to the mountains. Barely. The Pamirs. They rise ahead like teeth jagged, snow-bitten, and absolutely uninterested in your survival. They're called the roof of the world for good reason. From the flat openness of the steppe, you now face towering cliffs of rock and snow that seem to slice into the clouds. Even the camels hesitate, sniffing the frozen air and stepping lighter than usual. You pull your scarf tighter, but it does little to block the wind, which knifes through wool and skin like it's peeling back your thoughts. Your guide warns you in his usual, understated way. Cold now, don't die. You nod. That's probably the best advice anyone's given you this whole journey. The path narrows quickly. Gone are the wide, dusty trails and gentle dunes. Now you climb narrow switchbacks that flirt with cliffs, each step feeling like a gamble. Sometimes the drop is a few feet. Sometimes it's hundreds. You don't look down. You don't look up either. The summit's too far, too grim, and too likely to disappoint. Instead, you watch your feet, your camel's feet, and the boot prints of the person ahead of you, half frozen into the dirt. The air thins quickly. You don't notice it at first, just a little lightheadedness, a strange sense of floating, but then your legs begin to tremble, your lungs tighten. Each breath feels like sipping air through a cracked reed. You sit down for a break and immediately start to shiver. The cold creeps in fast up here. The sun may shine, but it doesn't warm. You're offered a cup of hot yak butter tea, thick, greasy, and salty beyond belief. It tastes like regret, but it coats your throat and settles your stomach. And in this environment, that's luxury. You slurp it down and actually ask for more. The higher you go, the stranger things get. The landscape becomes surreal rock formations that resemble frozen waves, snow patches shaped like faces, and the distant sound of what you could swear is whispering. Your guide tells you that some caravans, upon reaching this altitude, began hallucinating. Some heard bells, some saw people waving from cliffs, some spoke to invisible travelers they swore were real. You laugh, but nervously, and then you see one. At a distance across a frozen ridge, there's a figure standing still, robed, motionless, watching. You blink, look again, gone. You don't mention it. Quirky fact, some early travelers carried pebbles in their mouths when climbing to stave off thirst. You try it and it helps. if only because it gives your brain something to focus on besides don't fall and don't throw up from altitude. You pass a skeleton, half buried in snow, human, wrapped in rotted silk. No one stops. Not out of rudeness, but because to stop is to lose momentum, and momentum is everything here. Your camel slips once, recovers. Your knees buckle, but you catch yourself. You've never wanted to quit more than you do right now, but there's no place to quit to. It's forward or freeze. And still, your guide walks like the mountain owes him money. You ask how long until the next camp. He says, 2 hours, or 4, or if weather comes tomorrow. You don't laugh. He's not joking. The wind changes near sunset. It picks up fast, too fast. The sky shifts from blue to bruised grey. A snowstorm is coming. The group moves faster, tighter. No more talking, just footsteps. The silence is filled with breath-loud, gasping, urgent. And then, mercifully, you reach it. A small stone shelter built into the mountain itself, low, square, ancient. Smoke trickles from a hole in the roof. Inside, warmth, fire, people. Old traders, mountain nomads, and other fools like you, huddled together like mismatched books on a shelf. You collapse by the fire and feel warmth sting your skin, actual sting, like it's punishing you for being cold so long. A man hands you a bowl of soup. It smells of barley, bone, and something sharp. You eat it like it's the first food you've ever had. Inside the shelter, walls are covered in soot marks, names scratched into stone, messages in dozens of languages. One says, "Still breathing." Another says, "This mountain dreams of drowning." You're not sure what that means, but it lingers. Historians still argue whether these highland shelters were government-built during imperial expansions, or if they were simply made by traders over centuries. Some believe the stones themselves were hauled up here one by one. You don't know, and you don't care. All that matters is that it's warm, the wind is outside, and you're not dead. You sleep that night with the sounds of howling wind and crackling fire braided together, like a lullaby written by the mountain. You dream of home, but not your real home. A weird blend of cities you've passed, deserts you've crossed, and fires you've shared with strangers. In the morning, your joints scream when you try to stand. Your face is windburned. Your hands are swollen from cold, but you're alive. And the sky outside has cleared to a pale blue that almost makes you believe in mercy. You leave the shelter with a new respect for the phrase, survival instinct. The descent is no less brutal. Ice sheets coat parts of the trail. One slip could mean a broken leg, maybe worse. You move slower now, cautious, reverent. Every stone is holy if it holds your weight. As you descend, the air thickens. You breathe easier. Colours return brown, green, even a few yellow tufts clinging to life in sheltered crevices. You hear water again, not just wind, but actual streams trickling somewhere below. And then you see it. A valley, wide, bright, alive. You don't weep, but you feel the tightness behind your eyes. You made it over. You crossed the roof of the world and didn't fall off. But you're still not safe. You're just halfway there. The valley greets you not with fanfare or feasts, but with a stink. A thick, unmistakable mixture of wet wool, animal sweat, old garlic, unwashed humans, fermented yak milk, and what you suspect might be the ghost of every traveller who's ever collapsed here. It's overwhelming, offensive, and weirdly comforting, because if there's a stench, there's life, and if there's life, there's trade. You've reached a major hub on the Silk Road. You're in a convergence point where multiple routes spill into one tangled mess of tents, stalls, carts, and shouting people, each trying to make sense of a dozen languages at once. Spices waft from open sacks in waves. Cardamom, clove, anise, cumin. Dried citrus peels mix with the smell of wool grease. Silk flaps in the wind like nervous flags. Bells jingle from donkey harnesses. You've never seen so much movement in one place that also somehow looks like it might fall apart at any moment. Your camel groans and promptly tries to sit in the middle of a trade road. You pull its lead. It glares at you, and then, in an act of protest, releases a noise so loud and wet you're instantly granted a 5-foot circle of personal space. You mutter a thank you and drag it toward the designated caravan rest enclosure. Everything here costs twice what it did 3 stops ago. You try bartering with a woman selling boiled eggs, but she snorts at your offer of a cracked belt buckle and gestures instead for silver. You don't have much left. You hand over a small tang coin, and she bites it before dropping 2 eggs into your palm with a nod. The shells are warm and speckled. You eat them both on the spot. This is the part of the road where you're expected to replenish, restock, and reassemble whatever spirit is still rattling around inside your ribs. It's also the place where disease often lurks, with people packed this tightly breathing, sweating, sneezing into one another's lentil stewlness spreads like rumours. You cover your mouth with a cloth and try to breathe shallow. Your guide, unbothered as ever, chomps on something pickled and starts asking around about the eastern passes. You hear stories. One man swears a landslide has blocked the next route east. Another says a rival caravan was ambushed by mountain bandits and left stripped to the bone figuratively. You hope. A third insists that the city ahead has closed its gates entirely due to plague. You ask your guide which story is true. He shrugs. Probably all a little. You spend the day winding through stalls, soaking in the chaos. One vendor tries to sell you a roll of imperial silk that upon inspection is very clearly just linen dyed pink. Another offers dried figs coated in what he claims is powdered gold. It's not. It's sugar and sand. Still, the figs are good. You buy two. You overhear arguments in Persian, Uyghur, Chinese and Greek. Traders wave arms, stamp feet, gesture furiously, then suddenly laugh and slap each other's backs. Deals are made, broken, remade. One man trades a mirror for a goat. Another trades a fur-lined hat for a song and a piece of turquoise. A child sells pebbles painted with animal faces. You buy one shaped like a lopsided cat. You name it. Franklin. It's your best friend now. Quirky historical truth. Some traders travelling through these hubs wore sachets of perfume around their necks not for fashion, but as protection against disease. They believed pleasant scents would ward off illness. You try stuffing some cloves and mint into a cloth pouch and tie it near your chest. It doesn't help much, but now you smell like a confused stew. By nightfall, your ears ring from the noise, and your legs throb from navigating crowds. You find yourself at a bathhouse, a rarity and a luxury. You pay with your last silver bead. Inside, the water is lukewarm, the steam heavy, and the tile floors slick with moss. You strip, submerge, and almost melt. You scrub at the dust and sweat until your skin is pink. A man beside you hums an unfamiliar tune while splashing himself with ladlefuls of water. No one speaks. The bath is a temple, and silence is its only rule. Afterward, wrapped in a threadbare robe, you sip herbal tea and sit by a brazier. For a moment, everything is still. The fire flickers, the tea warms your chest, and for the first time in weeks, you almost feel clean. But the quiet doesn't last. Just before dawn, a commotion breaks out near the east gate. A caravan tried to sneak out early, and someone attacked them. Not bandits, rival traders. A blood feud, maybe. A business deal gone bad. Whatever it was, it ended with 2 camels wounded, and one man stabbed in the thigh with a bone-handled knife. You hear the story repeated in a dozen versions before breakfast. In one version, the stabber was avenging his brother. In another, it was over a stolen silk design. In another, it was all a misunderstanding over whose soup pot was whose. Historians still debate whether violence among traders was common or exaggerated by later accounts. You no longer care about scholarly consensus. You care about getting out before someone mistakes you for a cousin of the soup thief. Your guide rushes you through packing. "We go now," he says. Before Market gets angry again, you obey. There's no arguing when he's in motion. You head out through the east gate, just as the sun rises, a sliver of orange cracking the mountains. The air is thinner again, cleaner, cooler. You breathe deep. It smells less like old mutton and more like open road. And yet, as you walk, you feel the filth clinging to you still. In your hair, your boots, your bags. Silken spices and salt don't smell good after 3 weeks in the same pouch. You pass other travellers, now some alone, hunched and suspicious. Others in groups, laughing, sharing dried fruit. You wave once. One woman waves back. Progress. You glance down at Franklin, your rock friend, tied to your pack by a string of frayed ribbon. He's still smiling, crookedly. He's probably the only one. You press forward. The scent of civilization fades. The silence returns. And with it, the road reminds you. Comfort is temporary. Cleanliness is an illusion. The stink of survival is eternal. You've stopped trying to track the miles behind you. It's easier to count the things you've lost. 1/2 of your good sandal strap, at least 3 teeth to dried dates, the ability to smell anything pleasant, and somewhere along the line, a tiny piece of hope. The road east was supposed to be smoother, less deadly, more cooperative, that's what they said. They lied. Again, you march into a landscape less defined by shape and more by absence. The air grows dry again, crackling with static, as if the earth itself is preparing for another trick. Trees vanish. Grass thins. What remains is an endless riddle of cracked earth, scattered stones, and the occasional toppled marker whose carvings have long since been erased by wind and time. Your camel trudges onward, less like a beast of burden now and more like a slow-moving anchor. It's during one of these long, punishing days, no shade, no breeze, your lips sticking to your teeth, that your guide stops and raises a hand. Ahead, the road splits, not with a helpful signpost or convenient tree, but with two equally miserable-looking paths, one to the left, vanishing into a flat horizon of bone-white dust, the other to the right, winding toward a series of low hills that resemble sleeping crocodiles. There is no consensus among the group. You vote for the hills. You wish you hadn't. The path narrows quickly. Thorn bushes claw at your legs. The rocks shift beneath your feet like loose teeth in an old mouth. After an hour, it becomes obvious that this shortcut is a mistake. And yet you push forward, because backtracking would cost days. And worse face, by late afternoon, the wind picks up. It's not a playful breeze, but a steady, deliberate force that grows stronger by the minute. Sand kicks up in bursts. First at your ankles, then your knees, then your eyes. The sky begins to yellow. Your guide curses, low and short. Storm. There is no shelter, no rock outcropping, no cave, just a shallow depression in the ground, and a half-collapsed stone wall from some forgotten way station. That becomes your refuge. Camels are hobbled. Tarps are tied. Scarves are soaked and wrapped. You crouch beside your guide, clutching your pack, your face wrapped in 2 layers of linen. And then it hits. A wall of sand, shrieking across the land like 1,000 angry bees wrapped in burlap. It slams into you with enough force to knock breath from your lungs. You squeeze your eyes shut. Sand fills every crevice, your nose, your ears, your teeth. Your clothes slap against your skin like wet towels in a wind tunnel. You hold on. Everyone does. Because if you let goof your pack, your camel, your senses, you may not find them again. Historians still debate how frequent and dangerous these storms were along the eastern legs of the Silk Road. But lying there, praying your tarp doesn't rip in half, you no longer care about academic nuance. The storm doesn't care, either. After an hour, the wind softens. By 2 hours, it dies. You emerge like a beetle from under a rock-sputtering, blind, gritty in every possible way. Your camel has half its harness torn off. Your water flask is missing. Your guide's beard is full of sand and fury. But you're alive. The path forward is half buried now, barely visible under waves of fine dust. You press on anyway. With every step, your boots fill again. You stop caring. You stop emptying them. That evening, your group stumbles upon a strange cluster of low mounds unnaturally round, half stone, half earth, arranged like a forgotten chessboard. You recognize them for what they are, burial sites, old, unmarked. You walk silently through the field, watching where you step. Some are cracked open, looted long ago. Others remain untouched, sacred by chance or fear. Your guide stops and whispers, "Don't point." You don't. Apparently, pointing at the dead invites them to follow. You keep your hands at your sides, eyes forward, breath held. When you stop to make camp, no fire is lit. Not out of respect, but because there's no fuel. Not even a dried twig. Dinner is cold, silent. A few strips of meat, a handful of millet. You chew slowly, every bite echoing like thunder in the quiet. Quirky tidbit. It was common for travelers in these regions to carry tiny charm amulets made of knotted thread, carved bone, or even pressed flower petals wrapped in waxed clotho, protect against bad spirits and road curses. You make one out of a button, a string of camel hair, and a sliver of mirror. It's ugly, but you feel better. The next morning brings another blow. You're lost. Not completely, your guide insists he knows the general direction, but the road is gone. Eaten by the storm, the horizon has shifted, familiar landmarks buried. The sun rises, but its position brings no clarity. You keep walking, veering slightly east, then northeast, then due despair. By midday, tempers flare. Someone accuses someone else of misplacing the compass stone. Another demands a vote to turn back. Your guide says nothing, just walks faster. You follow. And then you see it. A structure far off, but unmistakably man-made. A tower, crumbling, covered in sand, but real. You stumble toward it, like it's a lighthouse. Stomach flipping with cautious hope. It's a ruined watchpost, centuries old, but someone's been here recently. A faded cloth tied around the base, camel tracks half blown over. Inside, a stash of supplies, broken tools, a few mouldy dates, an old knife, and a map. It's hand-drawn, frayed, barely legible, but it matches your terrain. Hills, riverbed, pass. The route to the next trade city is here. You could kiss the stone. Your guide studies it, nods once, then says, "If no storm tomorrow, we move fast." You nod. You don't trust your voice. That night, there's still no fire, but someone pulls out a flute and plays a melody so soft it almost blends with the wind. A few heads bob. One person hums. You rest your back against the watchpost wall and, for the first time in a long time, let your mind wander beyond survival. You think about home, about what you'll say when you return if you return. Will anyone believe you? Will they care? You think about Franklin, your pebble friend, tucked safely into your pack. He's earned his keep. You think about the camels, the guide, the thieves, the child who painted your name on a rice sack, the ghost you saw in the snow. The road hasn't just dragged you forward. It's pulled parts of you off, left them in the dust, and replaced them with something harder, stranger, something that might just be able to finish the journey. The final leg is supposed to be the easiest. That's what everyone says. Once you reach the lowlands, they promise, the road smooths out. You'll see more travelers, more inns, more safety. The dust turns to packed earth, the bandits thin out, and you'll even start to smell cooked food again. You'll hear bird song, maybe music from a caravan camp, and the glittering towers of the eastern cities will peek over the horizon like a reward you've somehow earned. But that's not what happens. What happens is this. Your group wakes early under the brittle shadow of the ruined watchpost, loads up quickly, and sets off under a sky choked with clouds that don't look like rain, they look like ash. Your guide mutters about bad air. You ask if it means weather. He just shakes his head. Sickness, maybe. Dead wind. Happens sometimes. You pull your scarf tighter and keep walking. The terrain does begin to change. The sand hardens underfoot. Sparse grasses appear. But that only means more decisions, more forks in the road. And the closer you get to civilization, the stranger the people you pass. Traders with haunted eyes who don't speak, only nod and shuffle on. Wandering monks who carry nothing but a bell and a begging bowl, chanting under their breath in words you don't know. A man who walks beside you for nearly an hour without saying a word, then vanishes behind a dune when you blink. Still, you push on. You eat the last of your millet. You sip from your increasingly foul-smelling water skin. You try to stay alert, but your body is running on reserves you don't remember storing. Late in the day, the road splits again 3 branching tracks, each marked by a different carved stone. None are labelled in a language you read. Your guide squints, walks to each one, mutters something, then points to the middle path. Fastest, but cursed. You blink. What? He shrugs. Old story. City fell. Plague maybe. Spirits. Doesn't matter now. It's just a road. You take the cursed road. Not because you believe in ghosts, but because you're too tired to care. The path winds through low hills, scorched by wind. The rocks are twisted, brittle, red as dried blood. You see no birds, no insects, no tracks but your own. The silence here feels thicker than before, like the air doesn't want to carry sound. Even your camel seems reluctant, grunting low and dragging its feet. The others in your group avoid eye contact. No one jokes, no one hums. You pass ruins, crumbled walls, roofless domes, a stone tower split down the middle like a cracked egg. Once, this was a town, maybe a stopover. Now it's a skeleton, long picked clean. You walk past a well with no bucket and no water. Inside, just darkness, and a damp smell like mildew, and something else, something sweeter, rotten. You move on quickly. Your guide finally says something after hours of silence. They say people here buried their dead standing up, so they could watch the road. You glance behind you, uncomfortable. You try not to look too closely at the rocks beside the trail. You set up camp just outside the ruins. No one builds a fire. No one wants to draw attention. You eat dried fruit in the dark. You fall asleep listening for footsteps that never come. Or maybe they do. You can't tell anymore. In the morning, the clouds break. Sunlight streams down, warm and golden, and for the first time in days, you feel something unfamiliar. Hope, and then you see it. A shimmer on the horizon. Not a mirage, not a ghost, but rooftops, flags, a city, the Eastern Gate. You've made it. You limp the last few miles. You smell food, actual food, boiled rice, maybe soup, meat sizzling on a brazier. Your mouth floods. Your stomach protests but is ignored. You pass farmers. They barely glance at you. You pass traders heading west, their faces clean, their carts full. One nods to you. You nod back, too tired to explain that they have no idea what's coming. The city is surrounded by wall stall, wide, and painted with faded murals. You stare at them like they're dream paintings. A guard eyes your caravan, then waves you through. No fanfare, no questions, just a hand gesture and a grunt. Inside, the city pulses with sound. Carts rattle over stone. Drums beat in the distance. Someone is selling dumplings from a stall shaped like a dragon. Children run past with handfuls of sticky candy. Your camel lets out one long, final moan and collapses near a watering trough. You stagger into the nearest inn. The floor is clean. The walls are lined with embroidered banners. The smell? Glorious. You pay with your last remaining coin and are given a mat to sleep on. It feels like royalty. You're offered a meal. Rice, soup, pickled cabbage. You eat slowly, reverently. You drink a full cup of clean water and almost cry. You wash your face in a basin, and the dirt comes off in layers you forgot were there. Later, you sit under a paper lantern, staring at the people around you, scholars, monks, couriers, all speaking languages you don't know. And for the first time in weeks, maybe longer, you breathe without fear. Historians still argue whether Silk Road journeys truly changed the people who walked them or just punished them into endurance. You think about that, staring into your empty bowl. Maybe both. Maybe being changed and being broken are just two flavors of the same soup. Quirky fact. In cities like this, some travelers burn their road clothes outside the city gate as a ritual symbolic cleansing, and also, let's face it, hygiene. You consider it. Your boots might actually be sentient by now. You stay for a week, long enough to rest, long enough to stop jumping at every loud noise. But eventually, your guide appears again, cleaner, calmer, and asks, "You go back?" You stare at him. Back? You laugh so hard you nearly choke on your tea. Not yet. Not for a long, long time. And now, with the trail behind you, your muscles softening into stillness, and the noise of the road finally falling away, it's time to rest. You've crossed deserts, faced storms, bargained with strangers, survived spoiled stew, and met more than one creature, animal and human alike, that might have wanted you dead, but you made it. Maybe not in one piece, maybe not the same person who started the journey, but you're here. The city quiets, the torches dim, and in the hush of distant trade bells and fluttering cloth, your heartbeat slows. You feel the weight of every mile melt into your bones. You earned this stillness. You earned this breath. And even if you never take another step on that old Silk Road, a part of you will always walk it in memory, in dream, in dust. So go ahead. Close your eyes. Let the fire burn low. Let the sandstorm become a whisper. You're not lost anymore. You're just resting. Good night. Sweet dreams.